the purpose of life is not to avoid people and avoid situations. I think that the purpose is to learn how to engage with that situation and not let it bring you down.
This is Find Joy with Joyan Season 2, where joy gets stronger, our community gets bigger, and together we become better versions of ourselves in a world full of limitless possibilities. I'm your host, Joyan Chan. And every Wednesday, we bring you inspiring stories that will light up your soul, powerful message that will make you go wow, and fun conversations that will crack you up. With me and my special guests and friends, it is my personal mission to empower you to live and lead a life with joy. If you are new here, this podcast is for you if you are looking for more joy, courage, passion, and purpose in your life. We dive deep into mindset mastery, spirituality, love and relationship matters, and how to manifest more success and abundance in all aspects of your life, however that looks. This podcast has got your back every step of the way. Now, without further ado, get ready to laugh, learn, and live your life to the fullest. Our guest today imagines a world where people are not in constant pain and anxiety, where they are able to live in the present moment without guilt or worry, and her dream is to demonstrate and teach the tools that can activate a fulfilled and peaceful life filled with joy. Her hope is to enhance the human experience by introducing alternative sources of energy healing, divination, and healing instruments that are conducive to reaching our higher selves. She's here today to empower you to shine a light on your existing path towards your spiritual awakening. So guys, help me welcoming the shamanic and master Reiki practitioner, Jassy Jackson. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much. What a great introduction.
It is such a joy to have you here today, joining us today. So let's dive right into it. In your bio, you mentioned that most people are in constant pain and anxiety, and they are not able to live in the present moment. Why do you think that is the case in today's world?
I think that because I had some personal experiences where I felt like I was doing really great at life, meaning I was checking off all the boxes. I did everything my parents said I should be doing. I did everything my siblings and aunts and uncles, friends all said I should be doing. And yet I was still really sad and in pain. Like it manifested for me physically. I had fibromyalgia and anxiety. And one day I just, from not listening to what my spirit really wanted, I think I just had a breakdown. And when I look around and I talk to people and I see clients, they have similar experiences as well. And so I think that we're missing something in society in terms of like really going internally and reflecting and figuring out who we really are instead of just going with the masses and being what everybody else wants us to be.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody, I mean, not everybody, right? Uh, there is a general assumption. I mean, most people can relate to that, I'm sure. And personally, I've been through the similar journey, right? Um, you know, achieving everything on the outside, but inside I was miserable, I was depressed, and that's how I got myself into depression. And so, could you bring us back to a pivotal point of your life or moment of your life where you had your spiritual awakening?
Yeah, I've had a few, but the one that really stands out for me every time when someone asks me that question is the one where I really thought that I was on the right track. And, I had the biggest office in the building in corporate America, like when I was working in corporate America, and I got married and I really felt like I was successful for my age. And yet I was driving to work every day. It was like a 20-minute drive. And I was sobbing every single day. And one day I went over to my sister's house and something happened where my body just couldn't take it anymore. And I started to have this mental breakdown. And I remember a friend of mine had told me about Reiki. And when he told me about Reiki, I was like, I don't know about that. I'm in therapy. I'm already doing all the things I need to be doing. I feel like I'm okay. But 2 weeks later, when I had that mental breakdown, I thought about him, and I thought about, like, okay, I've tried everything. I've been to therapy, I've been to doctors, I've tried the pills, I've tried everything that's conventional. I'm willing to try something else now. And I think that hitting that rock bottom, having that mental breakdown and not knowing what else to do really opened me up to being like, okay, let me try something that's not conventional. And the first Reiki experience, I saw lights behind my eyes. I felt all of the stress and anxiety kind of melting away. I hadn't felt that way in a long time. And that weekend after the Reiki, I really started to think about it, really got me back in touch with myself internally. And I really took it slow all weekend long and really thought about, like, okay, what are next steps? What else can I explore? And I started to get into breath work, and I started to get into meditation. I was doing yoga for a really long time, and then I figured out that yoga was not for me. And so I started to kind of figure out what spoke to my soul, and really I started to realize that there's a whole other world that I was denying myself.
Yeah, yeah, you mentioned something really important right here. I believe is there's so many different alternative healing modalities or techniques and tools that we see on social media or just everywhere today, right? So how do we know? How do we pick one that is something that I've been personally struggling with as well for quite some time? Is that I couldn't really identify one or pick one that I really want to, because I also, I've tried quite a lot of different techniques like shamanism meditation, or meditation, yoga, Reiki healing, energy healing. I've tried so many. And I couldn't really find one that speaks to my soul. So what does that look like to really know what is needed and what do you really need?
Yeah. So going back to my yoga story, I was doing yoga for like
Yeah.
15 years. And every time I did yoga, I felt worse.
Hmm.
And I didn't understand why. I thought, oh, maybe it's just my own limitation. And I think it's really about being open to experimenting and not trying to do something that really isn't for you, and really paying attention and being mindful around what your body feels like, how you feel like days after. I highly recommend for people to try one modality for at least 30 days, and then take stock into, like, how did you feel before and after and during? And even though it might be hard at first, or it's not as easy, it might still be giving you some really great benefits, and you might be enjoying it. But if you're not enjoying it, if you're coming out of it with more pain, if you're coming out of it with more anxiety, which in a lot of cases that's what was happening with me in yoga. Like, I had a lot more anxiety, and which it's supposed to do the opposite, and a lot more pain, because even though I was doing it quote unquote properly, I don't think that that was necessarily the modality for me. And I was just trying to make it work because it was all the rage in my society or in my neighborhood. And once I tried breath work, it wasn't great the first two times, but then afterwards, it's like, wow, my brain is like back. Like, I have better memory, and I have a better mood, and just the benefits were there, even though I don't necessarily like doing it in the moment. How I feel afterwards and my disposition, days afterwards, really spoke to, like, okay, this is something that is great for me personally.
Mm. So do you believe that if we have to try so hard, right? If we had to try very hard to make something work, it's not something that is meant for us.
I think that it depends. I think that there are certain factors. So for example, with breath work with me, I do have to try hard in terms of getting myself to doing it.
Yeah.
But the benefits afterwards is incredible. The yoga part with me, Like it really was a struggle. Like I could tell in my body that I was tensing up and I was recoiling, and it wasn't something that I was necessarily looking forward to. So I think if it's not as easy, we have to really examine at like, what is it about that? Is it the way that I'm internally reacting? Is it, is it an external factor? Is it the teacher? Because I did try different teachers. I tried different, like I tried hot yoga and hatha, and I just tried so many different ones because maybe it was it was an external factor. And so I think we really need to look at it in a critical way and really asking like that question of why and what is causing this. And maybe the answer is it's not for me. Maybe I need to search for something else that's out there. Somebody recently, not recently, maybe 2 years ago, introduced me to qigong. And
Hmm.
qigong was such a beautiful practice. And while it has the stretching, that's very yoga like, it's actually easier on my body. And I actually enjoy it because it works with the chi. And I don't know, it's paired a little bit more towards what is good for my soul.
Yeah, that is interesting. So, okay, going back to your story. So you tried the first, you had your first Reiki session, and then what happened next? How did you eventually become a master Reiki practitioner yourself?
Yeah, I started going to my Reiki master once a week, and then eventually I scaled back to once a month. And I still go about once a month. And I think it took about 3 years before I said, you know what, I really want to learn how to, because so many things were happening during that time. Like I was getting a lot more aligned. I was feeling more in my body. I was really healing from the inside out, little by little, from all the sessions that I was having. And eventually, something brought me to say and be really curious about and ask about what Reiki was. How does one get trained? And I started to ask those questions, and it really pulled me towards that direction. And so it really took me about 3 years to kind of decide that. And I took my level 1 and level 2 that year. And then about a year later, I did my master Reiki. And it really, it really unfolded naturally. I never meant for it to be a business. I was asking friends and family if I could practice on them, and then they started referring people out, and it just kind of grew from there. And I really enjoy teaching and guiding people through that path.
Yeah, yeah, that's beautiful, right? So, okay, for people, I forgot to, ask this question. For people who don't know about what is Reiki, can you explain to us, to them, what really is Reiki, what Reiki is?
Yeah, so Reiki is directly translates to universal life force. So it takes our natural energy that is within us and it awakens it. So I harness the universal life force through my channel. I have the Reiki energy flowing through me, and when I'm with a client, I'm able to sort of guide your energy centers and send Reiki energy through the energy centers to be able to be aligned, to remove whatever needs to be removed in terms of like energy that's not ours, and to really balance out our energy so that we're only in our own energy. And there's a lot of intentions that people can bring in into a Reiki session, and the Reiki energy will do the work that needs to be done in order to bring that intention into fruition.
Yeah, beautiful. So what are some of the misconceptions, or myths about Reiki that you would like to address?
Yeah, so I think that a lot of people think that they can come into a Reiki session and everything's going to be
Yeah.
magically different
Yes.
and without making changes in their lives. And so I think that in order for the Reiki to stay flowing and effective, we have to make certain changes in our lives. If we're going home and drinking a bottle of wine every night, that might not necessarily be conducive to our healing energy path, right? If we're constantly, not having a clean home is one thing that I see often, like making sure that we're not just cleansing our energy, but also cleansing our space and cleansing the habits that are not for our highest and best. And so I think that when we decide to go and see an energy healer, whether that's Reiki or some other type of energy healing, it's not something that's going to be magically, fixed for you. It's really something to pair with your therapy, to pair with other healing modalities, and to also pair with making habitual changes that will eventually lead you to a life that is a lot more aligned with your highest self.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you mentioned about higher self because you talk about it a lot in your work as well. So how do you define higher self, and how do we begin this journey to connect with our higher self?
Yeah, so the highest self, I like to always say that it is the version of you before you had any human experiences. It is the purest essence of your soul. It's the purest essence of who you really are before anybody told you who you are. And so getting back in touch with that innocence, with that purity within yourself, I think helps us, remind us of our purpose. It reminds us of why we're here. It reminds us that we are not our trauma, we are not our pain, we are not what we've experienced in this lifetime. And what I like to tell people is that in order to get in touch with your higher self, it's very easy. It's all around meditation and mindfulness, in terms of really dropping into your body and out of your head, and really finding that the purest part of your being inside.
It's beautiful. Yeah, actually, before our podcast, I did my meditation because it's my morning here, and that's what I do. In every day in the morning. At least I try to, right? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when I was doing my research about you, I visit your website, and the first thing that I see on your website is that you say the key to manifesting what we want is in our frequency and how we engage with the energy around us. So my question is, how do we engage, since we are still around this topic of energy, Reiki, right? And how do we engage with the energy around us in a way that is manifesting what we want?
Yeah, so I think that it's all around mindfulness. I want to tell you a story. So the reason why I have that quote there, because it really was the key to me shifting my frequency and coming out of this depression. Because what we naturally do, so like, let's say you're going to a party, and as you enter the party, there's a fight, right? Or somebody's having an argument. What happens is, if we're in high vibes and we are like so excited to be there, as soon as we notice that there's an argument happening, out we tend to match the energy of the room, and so our vibration quickly comes down, because we're not being mindful about it. And so I started to experiment with this, because there was a point when my husband was coming home from work really upset, really kind of depressed about his job, and always complaining. And
Mm.
so what was happening is, as soon as he came in through the door, I was matching his energy. It was bringing me back down. And so I finally decided, like, okay, during my meditation, I'm going to cut my cords and also fill my energy so big that there's no room for anybody else. And so I try to go up through a frequency that's pretty high. And then what happens is, as soon as he would walk through the door, I would it was all about how I engaged with him. I did not let him bring me down. I was very mindful, and I would hold my frequency so high that eventually he would start meeting me on my frequency. He started coming home not upset. He would stop complaining, and eventually got into a place where he was in a better space himself. And so really doing that experimentation with myself, I really went I did a deep dive on frequency and what that meant. And I was like, you know what? It really doesn't matter what situation you, because the purpose of life is not to avoid people and avoid
Ah.
situations. I think that the purpose is to learn how to engage with that situation and not let it bring you down. In fact, you can even influence that situation by keeping your frequency steady.
Well, I love this so much. Because just yesterday, I had a similar, I was in a similar situation, I would say, with my father, right? He came to a house and he was in such low vibration. He started complaining about my mom. It was like, oh, not again, right? So actually what I did was I just walked away, right? I avoided the situation because it happened too many times. So my question is, okay, what exactly did you do with your husband? How do we do, what exactly should we do to raise someone's frequency so that we don't so they don't bring us down, but instead we raise them up? What are the steps?
Yeah, so it's all around mindfulness, right? So I started noticing and observing, like, okay, this is what's happening and this is how it's affecting me. A lot like your father, right? Like,
Yeah.
this has happened so many times, he's not going to change.
Yeah.
So for me, I accepted my husband for where he was at. I can't do anything about it. He's not going to change. So what's going to happen is what needs to happen is I need to change, and accept that situation. And then during my meditations, what I would do is, I would do a cutting cords meditation where I would release all the cords and anybody's energy that's not mine. And then I would bring down the light in through my crown, and then I would fill myself up so big with my own energy all the way out into my aura. And I would set the intention that there's no room for anybody else and that my vibrations are going to stay high no matter what the situation is for that day.
Mm.
And noticing, and then just noticing when he would come home, like, okay, he's down, he's depressed, he's complaining. I wouldn't let it penetrate me, because a lot of what I was doing, and I think a lot of listeners might agree with this, is when we go to work, when we're interacting with people, we're taking in all that energy and we're just keeping it within our bodies. And so what I was noticing is that it was kind of going right through me. It wasn't coming through my aura, and I wasn't keeping that energy. I was just releasing it. If it was penetrating me, I was releasing it, and I wasn't letting it affect me or change my mood. And so it's all around mindfulness and really observing, and not allowing it to reach my inner being.
So for people who are listening to this, they might be thinking, okay, Jassy, you have years of experience, you are master Reiki yourself, like, but I'm just a regular guy or girl, right? So can anybody do this?
Absolutely. Everybody has to start somewhere. I had to start somewhere. And I think the more that you experiment with it, because, like, yeah, I can do this now, like, without even thinking about it, but I really had to work at it in the beginning. Like, okay, these are my intentions. This is what I'm going to do every single day. And the more and more you practice, just like any skill, right? The more you practice, the better you get at it. So, I think that there are a lot of like meditations online that you can find. I have some on my website as well, free meditations for cord cutting and higher self alignments, and really holding that intention that you're not going to take on other people's energy. It truly does work, and you'll start to notice it if you really turn on your observer and you start to see how you feel before and after, and how that's affecting the people around you. You're gonna feel like an absolute magical being.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm gonna try out some of your meditation later or tomorrow. So you are also a shaman, right? If I'm correct me if I'm wrong. So shamanism is an ancient tradition, as far as my knowledge goes, right? So how is it different from everything that we have already talked about?
Yeah, so I wouldn't necessarily call myself a shaman. Shamans generally come from Siberia and they have many, many years and they're there's like a whole thing that cultural thing that happens there. I would say I'm more of a shamanic practitioner. So I take the lessons from our indigenous people and really apply it into my practices and my everyday life, as well as sharing it with my clients. And what I would say is it's a lot like Reiki, in the sense of like the energy work piece, but I think that shamanic practices really focuses on our connection with Mother Earth, on our connection with nature, on really being in alignment with not just the elements of the earth, but also animals and beings. And it takes a very kind of earthly approach in terms of like the herbs that we use and the ceremonies that we do. I think that with the shamanic practices, sitting in teepee and meditating for hours at a time together in a group in ceremony really allows you to go even deeper, because I think that one thing is to meditate on your own, but to meditate with a group of people, I would say 8 or more people, there is something really powerful that happens there. I mean, I've sat in teepee in the past where I had this sharp pain in the middle of my back for years. And my intention going into that ceremony was to get rid of that. And since that ceremony, I have not had that pain. And so I think that a lot of the shamanic practices really takes the ancient wisdom that has been passed down through the lineages of many indigenous people, and it brings it into a new light.
Mm. And you mentioned about setting intention a couple of times throughout our conversation as well. So why is it important to set an intention before we meditate, before we do a ceremony, right? So why is setting intention so important?
Yeah, because I think that if we don't set an intention, then what is the purpose of being there? I think that when we're not very specific of the intention, the universe just doesn't know what to do with whatever it is that you're doing there. So even with Reiki, right, setting that intention, like I could do Reiki all day long, but is it actually going to target your needs? Is it going to actually do what you want it to do without actually asking for it? I think that in so many ways, like when we don't ask for what we need, we just don't get it. The answer is always no. And so going into any sort of practice, whether it's meditation, the intention could just simply be like to get rid of anxiety and to be more at peace. That's perfectly okay. It doesn't have to be complicated, but I think that having some sort of goal, some sort of intentionality behind it, it's going to make it all that powerful.
Okay, so if someone were to start their own journey towards inner peace or joy or spiritual awakening today, what is the first step you would recommend?
I would say to research all of the modalities that you can, from like sound baths to breath work, meditation, yoga. Find a community. It's so hard. It was so hard for me at the beginning because I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't, I didn't know many people that was into some of these modalities. And as soon as I found a group of people in some of these studios or some of these practices, a whole new world opened up for me. So I think diving in and really finding a community, really finding something that you think you might enjoy, and just giving it a try.
Yeah, I think you just have to try, right? Like then you would, back to what we talked about in the very beginning, is that you just have to try because there are so many different types of techniques out there, and you will find one that really speaks to you. So before we move on to the final part of our episode, do you have anything that you really want to talk about? Perhaps I didn't ask you, I didn't let you.
Oh wow. so much.
Wow, okay.
So I think that the one thing that's so important in this work, that because I started off, with yoga and meditation and it wasn't working. And I think that somewhere along the way, I realized that the most powerful thing that I could do for myself was really learn about myself and really learn about who I really was and having a sense of self. And what that translated to was boundaries. And I saw so many things about boundaries over the years. I think it was 2017. That was like the buzzword. And I would get so upset because I was like, I know that I need boundaries, but I don't know what it is. And I don't know how I can identify boundaries. And so I really went down this rabbit hole. I read so many books. I took so many classes, and I finally figured out that it really was about self love and really understanding myself and what was okay for me spiritually, mentally, physically.
Mm,
Because boundaries have so many different meanings. And so I would say that the best thing that you can do for yourself is to really get to know yourself. Take yourself out on dates, do some extra self-care love, because that's going to really open up your spirituality. And that was the one thing that really opened up a lot of my gifts and my intuition once I started to get really clear on boundaries and what it meant for me.
well, I love that. Wow, I love that message. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm so glad that I asked that question, and I wish I could talk to you more about boundaries. But there's always the next time. We can always have you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can talk about. I believe we can talk about so many things, right? So thank you so much, and we always end with our final five rapid fire questions. So these are the questions that I ask all my guests at the end of the show, and every question has to be answered in either one word or one sentence maximum.
Okay.
All right. The first question is, what is one thing you wish you knew earlier?
How to love myself.
I love that. Second question, if you could live your life all over again, what would you do differently?
Nothing.
Wow, that's powerful. The third question is, what is something you're trying to learn or curious about right now?
Um, right now I'm trying to learn about the Mayan calendar.
What is that?
So the Mayans were in South America, or Mexico, Guatemala, all through Central America. And I have a Mayan teacher right now I'm really leaning into what that was like back then, and also what the calendar looks like. So the Mayan calendar goes by every 13 days instead of 30 days, or 31 days. And believe that it's also 220 days, if I'm not mistaken. It might be 260, instead of 365, in a year. And they have very specific days for veneration of the gods. They have very specific days for ceremony, very specific days for introversion. We just went through the new year for the Mayan calendar. And so I'm just very curious because my family is from South America, and it's part of the culture, and it's something that really speaks to me.
Wow, that is really interesting. The first time that I heard of this. So yeah, go and learn and then come back and share all of it with my listeners.
Yeah, I would love that.
Yeah, I would love to. The next question, if you have 5 minutes and the whole world is listening to you, what would you say?
I would say, don't listen to what everybody else is saying. Listen to your inner voice. Listen to what truly speaks to you from the purest part of your inner being. Get in touch with your higher self, get in touch with the most authentic part of yourself, and just keep going, because we all fail to learn, and failure is not what makes us. It's when we quit that we really fail. So keep going.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite quotes as well. The last question is, what brings you the greatest joy?
I think sharing practices and being in community and being with people really does bring me the greatest joy.
Yeah, beautiful. All right, now tell my listeners where they can find you and connect with you online.
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram, Krista Luna Vortex, all one word. You can also find my website at www.krista-luna.com. That's krista-luna.com. And you can also find me on Facebook, same handle, Krista Luna Vortex.
All right. So guys, I hope you find this episode truly enlightening, and let us know what is your biggest takeaway from this episode. Take a screenshot and share on your IG story and tag me and tag Jassy. I will put all her links in the show note below, so make sure you visit the show note and give her a follow, visit her website, check out all the amazing things that she is doing, and we'd love to hear it from you. Also follow us on Instagram if you haven't already. Remember to like and subscribe whenever you listen to this podcast so you never miss another episode coming to you every Wednesday. And I will always leave you the same way as I leave with every other episode. Show up, the world needs you and you need you. Thanks for listening, and I wish you all a joyful and amazing day ahead. Thank you again for tuning into Find Joy Joyan podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, take a screenshot and share it on your IG story and tag Find Joy Joyan _podcast so I know you are listening. And leave us a positive review on Apple Podcasts if you haven't already done so. And remember to hit the subscribe button whether you are listening on Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music, or any of your other favorite platforms. If you love what we are doing and want to become one of our sponsors, you can send me a DM to connect. And thanks for being here. I will see you soon in the next episode.